that he was a fairly friendly individual. He wasn't, you know, a hardened criminal like he was, but he didn't act that way. And we had a very congenial conversation. When I first talked to him, he was not under arrest because we had no probable cause, technical term. But he was a person of interest that we wanted to talk to. So he invited us into his home, and he voluntarily came to the police department with us, and there we questioned him. He understood he wasn't under arrest, but we asked him to stand in a lineup. So you can see the picture outside of the lineup. He chose his own number, and after the lineup, he confessed, and he confessed to those 3 crimes that I just mentioned, 2 of which we took to court. It wasn't a hostile situation. He was mannerly, and I was friendly, and you know, so that's just the way it was. It was not a bad situation. We didn't have any bright lights or rubber hoses or anything like that. Both victims in these 2 different crimes, both picked him in the lineup as looking like the same guy. They wouldn't say positively. At the time they looked at him, they wouldn't say positively. Because you ask them, are you sure? And they weren't sure. But after the lineup, they were separated. They weren't talking to each other. They were in different rooms. But after the lineup, I went back into the interview room, and I didn't say anything to him for a few moments. And he asked me, how did I do? And I said, you didn't do so good, Ernie. Well, he didn't. They picked him out, but they just didn't want to say. He said, okay, I better tell you about it. And then, of course, he wrote this confession here, and I want you to stress the tight instructions on the top of that, because that's the rules that we operated under at the time. And so you need to understand that's how we worked. Now, after he confessed to these 3 crimes, we brought the 2 victims in again and opened the door, and they had a face-to-face with him. The first one, the case that before she said a word to him, he started telling her, you know, what happened. And so he said that, then after that, we had her come out of the room, and she said at that time, yeah, that's him, no question. But that was not the best of identification, because if she had gone in the room and just said, that's the guy, or let me hear you, you know, talk, or I had told the guy what to say, the suspect, Miranda. Now the next person that came in, she came in, she walked through the door and she pointed and said, that's the guy. So she knew it was him. They both knew it was him when they looked in through the mirror, but you know, people are reluctant to make a positive identification for fear that they may identify an innocent person. But there was no question in their mind that he was the guy after they confronted him nose to nose without looking through the mirror. That's how it has evolved. That's the rules even at the time, but we didn't always understand that. And we were overcautious, and you can see why. Police officers were being, you know, chastised for this by the Supreme Court, and a lot of people thought police officers used a lot of abuse on prisoners to get confessions, and there was this misconception. And so because of that, police officers were very, very cautious. The beginning of this era, when we were now required to read these rights, there was a good bit of misconception. And working as a policeman back in the 60s, when they first got these rights cards, we tended to overdo it. We tended to advise everybody, that they didn't have to talk to us unless they wanted to. They could remain silent. They could have an attorney. I mean, it hardly mattered. You stop almost anybody on the street, and it was not necessarily a custodial interrogation. But we told them anyway. It was like I found out that it was going before the Supreme Court. Now, it had been upheld in the state Supreme Court, the conviction, and so, but I didn't know that either because, it goes on the record. And after this case, I worked on other cases, but there was a feeling among the legal profession and that police officers abused prisoners, and they also tended to be in the decision handed down by the court, by the Warren Court. And when you read the decision, it didn't necessarily say we did anything wrong but rather than not telling them, but it sure talked about other police practices. The policeman's role in society is to observe the laws and the decisions of the court, regardless of what they are, or regardless of whether you agree with them or not. That's the law. And there is where we are today.